Hey, I'm Patrick Hall with fstoppers.com, and today I'm going to try to take a portrait with this beast, the 100 to 400 millimeter lens made by Tamron. Now, a few weeks ago, Tamron sent us this really interesting lens that you would typically use if you were a wildlife photographer or if you just shot traditional sports. But I like to shoot water sports like kiteboarding and wakeboarding, and typically I would get really close to the action and shoot with a wide-angle lens. But for this image, I'm going to do the complete opposite and get really far from my subject and zoom in all the way to 400 millimeters. Now, Lee Morris is a kiteboarder, and he recently asked me to take a photo of him with his brand new kite. And so I thought if I step really far away and zoom in all the way to 400 millimeters, perhaps I could make the kite huge and make that the entire background. Now, normally when you shoot kiteboarders really close to the wide-angle lens, the kite is really small in the background. But I wanted to step back, zoom in, and get a completely different looking shot. Now, in order to get everything to line up perfectly, I had to wade out 100 feet into the ocean. I had waves crashing, I had tides that were coming in and out, and I had to deal with a very specific wind direction so that I could get Lee to actually bring the kite down to the horizon and get everything to line up perfectly. So the next day I went back out to the beach, but I really never quite got the kite to line up directly behind Lee, and I was not really happy with the photographs. On my next attempt to take this photograph, things got even worse. So that was day 3, and as you can see, that was a complete failure. Weather did not cooperate at all. As you can see, as soon as I got out there, it started lightning, and everybody with kites just packed up and went back in. So I literally got soaking wet and then had to pack everything up. And as you can see from this footage, we had like a sandstorm, the clouds were coming in. I mean, it was dramatic. I wish I had some strobes and I could have done a portrait outside, because I potentially could have gotten this photograph that I have in my mind shooting at 400 millimeters and lit it with strobes, and with the clouds in the background, it would have looked epic. So I might actually pack up some lights, and instead of trying to get this photograph of Lee actually kiteboarding, maybe I can just get him standing out on the beach, and if we have crazy weather like this in the next couple days, I can do something completely different but still use that that compression by standing really far away to get the kite looking big. So I'm just gonna mark this one down as another failure. Alright guys, so this is the 4th attempt at this photograph. The last 3 times were pretty much disasters. We either had horrible weather, we had sandstorms. There was 1 or 2 clear days where I did get a couple good photographs, but I can't say that the kite was ever in the perfect position, and then Lee didn't necessarily give me the perfect look. I just think they're kind of subpar pictures. So I have made the executive decision to scrap this idea of getting a action shot of Lee kiteboarding, and instead we're going to try to do a portrait today. So we've moved to a different beach. We're now on Sullivan's Island, and the sun is setting, and the idea for this shot now is to have the kite really far behind Lee, nice and taut, and then I'm gonna still shoot at 400 millimeters, but because now we're on land, we're gonna have total control over the situation. Once again, I've shot all of these photographs at the different millimeters, and you can see how different this photograph looks at 70 millimeters all the way to 400 millimeters. The other advantage of this location versus the other one is I now have some palm trees in the background. I feel like this actually looks a little more interesting, and it still has that beachy vibe. So my plan today is I have 3 different B1 lights, and I'm going to light Lee with a beauty dish from the front, and then I also want to give a little kicker from the side so this looks kind of more like a commercial editorial image. So I'm going to put one B1 back behind him, and then I'm also going to strobe the kite itself so that it has a little bit more pop. And then hopefully with my shutter speed, I can bring up the right ambient exposure of the beach while the sun is setting. And by doing this, I hope that I can get a shot that looks both edgy and editorial at the same time. Now the sun isn't completely set, but it is lighting the scene. But luckily at this exposure, I'm going to be able to underexpose the scene just enough to where my strobes are going to be in front of Lee, just like the sun is, but they're going to be acting as the key light. So many times photographers might not think to put the light in front of their subject because that's where the sun is, but in many cases you can actually overpower the sun when it's low in the sky and use the sun just as a base exposure for your scene while still lighting with a strobe. So let me get everybody in position, and hopefully we can finally knock this photo out. All right, so for our key light, I'm actually gonna use a beauty dish on this B1. I really like using beauty dishes at the beach because they're a little easier to manage with the wind compared to a softbox, and especially compared to an umbrella. But I'm gonna just lift this right above Lee's head a few feet. Can you see into that? Perfect. All right, and I have this probably set about 4 or 5 feet away from Lee. If you go too much further, you're not really gonna get any benefit from the beauty dish. But if I have him too close, I worry that the light might only light his face and not his whole body. So usually you don't use a beauty dish for a full body shot, but I think this is gonna work well for the beach shot out here. So as you can see from this test shot, everything looks pretty good. The Profoto beauty dish looks really nice on Lee. It's illuminating him evenly. I have it set to level 8, which is 2 stops lower than full power, which is going to allow me to shoot a little bit faster without having to worry about the refresh rate. So let me go position this kicker light. I'm gonna take another shot from this exact same location and we'll see how that adds to the photograph. I also think I want this kicker light to be a little bit warmer, so let's put a little bit of CTO gel on it as well. All right, so I'm gonna set this light pretty high. Usually kicker lights don't have to be as strong, but I have this really far away and it's kind of lighting the entire scene. And I actually forgot to bring my gaffer's tape, so I'm just kind of wedging my Profoto reflector dish on top of the gel. Not ideal, but once again, I forgot the tape. And so I don't get a hot spot on the sand, I'm gonna lift this light pretty high and make sure that it's still hitting Lee. And let's take another test shot here. And as you can see now, Lee's got a nice highlight on the side of him, and I think this looks pretty good. Now, when you're shooting at 400 millimeters, the slightest little movement to my left or right is going to change the background entirely. So I'm going to be very mindful where the palm trees are once we get the kite up in the air so that I can get the perfect composition. So for this third and final light, I just have this B1 just firing straight into the kite. I actually want it to illuminate the interior of the kite instead of being backlit. So I made sure that this light is in front of the kite. Now, another interesting thing I've noticed shooting 400 millimeters is I can get my lights really close to my subject because the field of view is so narrow. If I was shooting a wider angle lens, I'd have to put this light a lot further away to get it out of my frame, but luckily I could put this light like 5 to 10 feet away from the kite. So now that I have this light set, I'm gonna set the power to 9, and let's go take a final test shot and see how all 3 lights come together to produce this final image. All right, so the sun's setting now. I think we got a great shot. As you can see from this image, the 2 lights, the kicker light and the light that's hitting the kite, are kind of skimming across the ground, which was kind of unintentional. It just makes a dramatic lighting pattern on the ground, which I really like. And then when you have the palm trees in the background that are lit by the ambient light mixed with all the strobes, I think to me, this is just a perfect balance of strobe light and natural light. I really like the look of this shot. Normally, I would never think to shoot at 400 millimeters. The 70 to 200 is my go-to lens, but there's just no way to get that kite as large as I wanted without going past 200 millimeters. So having a lens like this Tamron 100 to 400 was great because I could find that perfect sweet point, which in this case was actually 400 millimeters. So this video is a lot of fun to make. I know I failed over and over, which made it both frustrating for me, but it also made it like a personal challenge. And I think at the end of the day, barreling through this process, I was able to create an image that was even better than the one that was in my head originally. If you guys enjoy videos like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel below and check out fstoppers.com for free daily content. And if you want to learn from some of the best photographers in the world, head over to fstoppers.com/store. I've been told there is a walking path this way that doesn't get any deeper than what I'm already at. And I gotta make sure I don't get my camera, lens, or the microphone wet. What could go wrong? David, the guy filming, he's already in chest deep of water, and water just sprayed all over this camera. This is a horrible idea, David. This is a really bad idea.